So thank you everyone today for joining our session on manufacturing in China, the power of relationships. We'll go into some trends that are going on in the region, what to expect in 2022 as we start to talk about the power of relationships. So just want to go ahead and give the outline of what we'll be doing. We'll be going through about a 25-minute presentation, and then we'll have the ability to do Q&A. So if at any time during the session you want to go ahead and leave any questions in Q&A, we can go ahead and get those prioritized for that part of the webinar. Want to introduce our experts today. So we have Benjamin Hopwood, our head of supply chain. And then we also have Louis Lau, our head of production for China. So Benjamin is a global leader in supply chain management across multiple global centers, including China. So he was the chief technology officer for Nova Technologies and general manager of Beckett Asia Pacific with over 15 years of global product development, manufacturing, and supply chain. Louis is a creator, entrepreneur, and a team player with a passion to build sustainable and strategic supply chain networks. He has over 8 years of international business, manufacturing, and supply chain experience. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Benjamin. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Caroline. Well, again, welcome for everyone who's on the webinar with us today. We are Gembah, and we are all about creating new products. Getting to see entrepreneurs and small to medium-sized organizations to helping you go from napkin all the way through creation of design files, getting things together, putting your team together, and then ultimately getting you to a place to where you can manufacture. For us, it's all about the bridge between those two things, where oftentimes product journeys fail, that Gembah is really focused in on. Today, excited to bring you a discussion on China. We've been going through a series where we've been talking about different regions. For Gembah, we have lots of different regions that we source in, everywhere from the US to Mexico to Central and South America to Central Asia to East Asia. And so today we'll be talking and reviewing just first. When we started out 2021, who would have known exactly where we were going to go? But to kind of talk through what our discussion points were at the beginning of the year when we were thinking about moving from 2020 to 2021. The first one was just that as people look at China, obviously China is not the same country that it was 10 years ago or even 20 years ago. And the opportunities for manufacturing are different, and the reasons for being there are different. But we're still talking about one of the premier manufacturing centers in the world. So when you look at overall aggregate production, you're talking about $4 trillion of product that's being exported from China on an annual basis, compared with like the next largest, which would be around 1 to 1.2 trillion. So a real powerhouse in terms of overall manufacturing. But what we've seen over the previous number of years is just really a really strong engineering group that's been raised up in the China region. And so engineering talent is one of the main reasons to be there, depending on your products. But the second one is just when we look at the supply chain network, from a stability standpoint, from the investment standpoint, whether you're talking about roads or rails or you're talking about ports, China has done an immense job of investing deeply into their infrastructure. And then the third one is just that it's a massive, it has a massive domestic market. And so for different organizations who are out there looking for where you can begin selling into, really having a synergistic strategy towards saying, yes, we want to be involved in multiple different markets. And if China is a part of that market, it can make a huge difference for you as an organization. That said, as we go into, as we talk about the year 2021 in review, what actually happened? What were some of the main things that we saw going on? One of the first things was that in the springtime, we saw a massive surge in production in the country. Part of this was due to shutdowns that were going on in Vietnam and in other countries in Southeast Asia, which ended up, there was a lot of organizations that ended up pivoting their manufacturing back to China with the sense of trying to stay in production and to make sure that for the rest of the year that they would be set. That said, that surge of pivoting, as well as consumer demand signals that were going off in the US and in other countries, ended up leading to a massive logjam in terms of with logistics. Now, this is something where we saw challenges across the board, both at the origin ports as well as the destination ports. And as many of you are probably aware, this actually continues into today, where we talked about this in a previous webinar, where when you end up going over the capacity of organizations to service, whether that's the ships that were transporting containers, or it's the carriers that they're on, or it's the transportation, the final mile transportation, that it ends up leading to massive log jams. And we saw that in a big way, and it continues into today. The final one is that more recently, we've been seeing just a lot of constraints in the country. More recently, as we went into the winter months, it started in the September timeframe, where we started to see power constraints in the country. This has been leading to all sorts of knock-on effects with coal and with other areas. But for some of you, I know that you've been informed by your Chinese suppliers that they may be shut down 2 to 5 days a week. Now what's interesting about it is that this only hit certain manufacturers in certain parts of the city under certain types of categories. And so in some cases, we saw manufacturers where the primary assembly group was not affected, but someone who was a sub-supplier was affected, which ended up creating challenges throughout. But overall, China still remains open for business. And what we're seeing, while production numbers are down slightly with some of the latest numbers that are coming out of the country, that the people are still shipping. But that said, we're seeing a number of different challenges going forward in the country. But today, what we'd really like to talk about is what do we see going into 2022, and what are some of the strategies that you can use? How can you be leaning forward into your China supply network? And for those of you who may not be manufacturing in China, what are the opportunities that exist today? The first one, as we look into 2022, is that we do see the COVID restrictions, so the travel restrictions continuing. And in this, we saw a lot of issues around this, but we do expect this to be continuing on, where this will mean that you could be spending 2 to 3 weeks if you want to travel personally to China. And so this is something that we do not expect to lift until potentially late spring or even summer of next year. The second one is that logistics costs. While many people have seen the really high logistics costs that happened in the summer, and this is kind of stabilized now in the fall and winter months, we do expect to see this continuing to trend down. But it probably won't begin trending down until after Chinese New Year. So we're expecting to see stability throughout the first quarter, and then potentially in the second and third quarter for this to begin coming down. The third one is that product pricing. It really depends on your category, but we've been seeing pricing consistently go up in China. This has been similar across the board in many different countries, primarily because of raw material and subcomponent pricing going up. That said, there is a glimmer of hope on the horizon. As an example, we ended up seeing pig iron prices in China reduced by approximately 20% recently, which indicates that we could see steel and other prices starting to drift down a little bit now that some of the crunch from the production is off. But that said, I would not count on all prices coming down. It's going to be a little bit sporadic as you move forward. And so this is going to be an important one as you look into the future. The third one is that we do expect to continue to see a trend towards automation in the country. This is an area where whether you're talking about pressures from raw material costs, or you're talking about pressures from higher labor costs, that we do expect to see automation to be continuing to be an investment trend in Chinese manufacturing groups, where they can offer lower prices primarily because of that automation that'll come into it. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the webinar later. But with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Louis, who's our Director of Production in China, to talk about a little bit of some of the categories that we're seeing and some of the trends that are going on in China today.
Thank you, Ben. So here is an app, actually is the category location in China right now. Actually it's from 0 dot on the map until nowadays. So as we all know, actually the manufacturer wave first is come from Europe, then goes to US, then goes to Japan, and then goes to, we call actually Asian Four Dragon, which is Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. So, and then manufacturer moved to the mainland of China. And until nowadays, it's actually the first round of manufacturers are located in coastal seasons. The famous area actually is in Guangdong, and which is close to Hong Kong, and also Canton Fair located here. Also Shanghai, like basically the historic biggest modern international city in China, and Fujian, which is close to Taiwan. So those Four Dragons, like wave 4, move to China and make like bring the experience, bring the manufacturer management, bring the how to make improve the product's quality. This experience to come to China. And right now, really have a very intense trend. You can see on the map, there is a lot of dots move to inner of China. So as a policy, and nowadays when we see manufacturer in the coastal city, for example, Shanghai and Guangdong, more is just like a sample room, like a showroom here, but they are manufacturing in inner of mainland of China. So that is a really big trend right now, what happened in China. So also some factory initiatives. First is China will still enhance like a mid-level of manufacturing, which means it's really the products around us, our life. So for like basically from 3 points, first is the quality assurance in intelligence. It's more about like not including the, like before we were thinking made in China is cheap and the lower price, lower cost. But really right now, like government also announcement to let in the manufacturer and the company to say, hey, we should improve our products quality, and also in designing in the quality area. And the second is, as I just introduced, like really move the movement of manufacturer to inland of China, which is getting a lower cost compared to like other countries. But also it means like a higher logistics cost and a longer time when you shipping stuff. And also it's also help like expand Chinese domestic markets right now. Like people are really focused on their own brand to make sure they can also send into Chinese guy, selling products to Chinese guy. So, and the second part is really the digital industry manufacturer. It really costs like the international plus is a really hot topic in China. So first, we can dig into that from the digital finance system, which is like QR code on WeChat, and we can pay anything like from that WeChat. So right now, really, the money for Chinese guys is just a number or just like a QR code. And digital manufacturer management system is more and more announced right now, especially have their own like a Chinese brand, for example, Xiaomi and Geli, this kind of branding in China right now. They really put a lot of money into develop the digital manufacturing management system. And second part we can see from that is a big data analysis. So actually, for my personality, I as a person like live in China, I didn't feel that much a lot. But really, COVID-19, when we have that, and on your WeChat, you basically will record where you go and where you living and how long you stay in that city. Then like you contact like a COVID-19 patients or not. So it's really something like a tracking system, but really big data analysis also for city building. And international plus manufacturer industry 4.0 actually from Germany, but China have so many parallel situation right now. We still have like a family manufacturing in China. So it's more like called international plus manufacturer, which means using the international power to help those manufacturers to managing their systems. The next very international strategy actually is a very big policy that government leading this. First is the Belt and Road initiatives. This right now it's already like over 100 countries join this group, and like government is really put a lot of energy and money to grow this this strategy. Second part is in economy-friendly manufacturing. It's also because China right now is the biggest manufacturer place in the world. So government also knows that we have this responsibility to taking charge of it. And the new energy and the new material, which means like about more about actually high technology development for the Chinese manufacturer. That's all, and move back to Ben.
Thank you, Louis. So as we think about this, kind of taking it from 30,000 feet, so we've discussed kind of some of the really big pieces of what's going on in China. Louis has now covered kind of what are some of the initiatives that your manufacturer in China is going to be aware of. These are some of the pressures that are going on, both from encouragement in terms of saying like, hey, this is the direction that we want you to be moving. But then also just situations that if you're not in China today, you may not be aware of. That said, to kind of take it again from that 30,000 foot down to like just very practical. When we start talking about relationship in China, for those of you who have traveled there and or are aware of the culture, it's still very important. And I think for many of us who have been outside of the country, you kind of have to stop and realize like it's been like 2 years since many of us have been there. For some, if you weren't there like right before COVID ended up hitting, it could be 3 years since you've actually sat down. And as you know, if you've ever sat down in like a boardroom of a manufacturer of other places, it's an important thing to actually show up in person to be able to go out and eat a meal together or do other things. And the reality is that I think that we've all realized that the business can be done in ways that don't necessarily require that. However, those types of opportunities oftentimes lead to just an opportunity to like begin to talk about how things are going in the business, both within your business as well as in the manufacturer's business. And so here, just have a few thoughts for you in terms of what we would be recommending as you start to move into the new year. The first is to really start to understand for the manufacturer that you may be at, is what is their capital investment strategy looking like today? We've talked about it with automation being a huge part of companies to offset rising material and labor costs. That said, it not only does that, but it also helps on the quality side of things as well as line turnover. So in other words, like from a standpoint of getting more lean in terms of having smaller MOQs and being able to be more agile, all of this is helped oftentimes by the right automation system, not just mass manufacturing automation, but automation that's flexible and agile. The second part of this, though, is that it really, if for instance, when you end up talking to your partner organization over there, if you end up finding out that there is no major serious effort towards automation, it should start to ping you towards understanding that this may not be an organization who's going to be there in the next 5 to 10 years, potentially closer to 5 years and maybe even shorter than that, if they're not currently investing in their systems today. The second, and then the final part of this is just that we are seeing some of the manufacturers out there starting to to really be challenged on the cash flow side of things. So there was a glut in the spring, and now we're starting to go into leaner times as we move into the winter. And one of the things that's being discussed is just access to capital and to finances. So this is something just to be aware of. It may not be something that you would directly ask. I would encourage you perhaps not to ask it directly, but you will want to assess, are there any issues that might be going on this side? Is there any issue that might indicate that they're under stress? The second thing, though, is as a major issue would be to understand what their product and market strategy is moving forward. One of the main reasons to be in China is because of the OEM and the ODM market. So that would be original equipment manufacturing and then the original design manufacturing. So essentially what that is that if you're looking to get very, very quickly into a product space, as for many of you've used your Chinese manufacturers to get a product that's basically ready to go that can be rebranded. What we're seeing, though, is we're seeing a lot of strength in the country where engineering departments have now come up to a place now where not only are they making the product, but they can also design it for you as an organization in terms of if you need some sort of customization. And from Gembah's standpoint, it's a real asset anywhere where we can find strong ODMs. But you also need to understand that once an organization gets to the place to where they understand their product well enough to where they can help to customize it for you, they can also start to go into the same markets that you're in. Now, that said, it's likely that you're going to be better understanding what the market is asking for and the way to brand it and to do those things. But that said, there's kind of a partnership here where they may understand better how to manufacture it in the places where costs can be cut and otherwise. So that said is that you want to understand kind of where are they at on that development curve? How many engineers do they have? Do they have the ability to do testing for different markets? And then what is their overall strategy for entering into new markets? Do they have their own brand that's potentially selling into the market that you're in? The third one that we'd encourage you to really have the discussion about is to understand what your collaboration opportunities are. And again, this is just something where we're just having the opportunity to talk with leadership and to kind of have a frank discussion about where are we in the overall production queue. I think for many people, this kind of caught them off guard when they found out that they were in a power constrained situation. It caught the manufacturers off guard, but then that ended up trickling down to clients who found that they might not have been at the front of the line. And so there are opportunities to have discussions about, well, if we ended up changing our minimum order quantity, or if we look at potentially our estimated annual volumes, like, would that help to change the perception of us as an organization with our products getting closer to the front of the line? These are just conversations to have. I think that you want to have them not necessarily at every meeting, but you will want to have these discussions. A second one is that we're seeing a trend where we're seeing not just finished product, but we're seeing a lot of high value, high volume subcomponents that are starting to be made in the China region. And because of that, that's then being exported to other countries where they go into final assembly in many, many different products. I think sometimes people can shy away from this discussion because they're just very worried that if we talk with our manufacturer about it, that all the alarm bells are going to go off and that they're going to think that we're dropping them. That said, what we would encourage you in is just to say that, like, on this one, having that discussion, I think, can be had. And it's something where you need to assure them that, like, hey, we really want to continue to buy these high value components. And having that discussion of, like, where does the manufacturer see the high value in the subcomponents that they're making such that they could continue on? Oftentimes, if you talk about having split production for a while, where for instance, we're going to have production that's going to remain at your facility, but we're also going to want some subcomponents to start going to other areas. This can be a delicate discussion, but it can also start to allow for diversification. The third one is the domestic sales side of things. This is one that just consistently I find that people are not really engaging in as much as I would encourage you to. There are many opportunities to do domestic sales in China, and beginning to look at that can really start to catalyze new opportunities for you, whether you're looking at volumes and pricing plays or other things, but that the domestic market still is there's many opportunities that we see there on a monthly basis with our clients that come through. The final one is just with value add manufacturing. This is one where we're leveraging the really strong engineering talent that's in China is something that oftentimes we find that our clients just overlook. They're not really thinking about it, but that for a similar competent engineer, you're looking at about 60% of the cost of some of the engineering that you may be paying for. And using that in the right mix allows for localization that can happen in products, but then it can also allow you to trim costs and in some case to do surge. So as many of you are aware, like if you end up having a surge of projects, having that ability to bring volume on quickly is it's a key place. And so having these discussions with your manufacturer, we just encourage you, like now is the right time as we start to head into Spring Festival, like don't wait till January. But as you head into the end of November, kind of in the early December timeframe, it's a great opportunity to celebrate with your manufacturer as to the work that you've done together and to begin kind of vision casting for what's next. Now, just to kind of finish up here, just on the product journeys, some of what we're seeing here is for those of you who have been in China, oftentimes you can get products into the market faster by going with products that are already being OEM'd out of the manufacturer. That said, that can lead to shorter discovery times in terms of with the group that you're going to be working with, and then more simplified tooling that'll go into it. That said, tooling is still being shipped from China to many other countries. And so there's a massive volume and just there's a lot of availability on that side of it. However, one caveat on this one is that because of steel prices and other areas with the volatility that we've seen, this is an area that's been going up and down in terms of pricing quite significantly. And so you may want to be tracking with that in terms of understanding what the trade-offs are between doing tooling in a different place. But certainly if you're going to be doing production in China, that's an option. And even if you're going to be doing tooling in another country, oftentimes we see the tooling done originally in China for that. Both from ramp as well as from moving into high volume. This is generally a shorter amount of time than we see in other countries, primarily because the subcomponents like high-tech fabrics or whether you're talking about electronic components, with them being done in country and or in Southeast Asia, there's just a shorter supply chain on this side. Now, as we all know, there's been a lot of challenges in subcomponent side of things. And so just I would say you want to go into this, especially if you have new product development going on, pretty deeply, just because we've seen a lot of people get caught off guard by components that they weren't expecting to be problems that ended up becoming problems later on. And then the final one is on the logistics side. And we've talked about this in previous discussions, but a lot of logistics that are going on today. We are seeing, once you're on the boat, times are still fairly fast, but it's really been at the destination ports where we've seen a lot of volatility, where some of the carriers are going through quite quickly, and then others are potentially lagging as long as 2 to 4 weeks off the coast. So it really depends on the carrier that you're using. And then obviously we've all seen with domestic news here in the US and other places where we're just, because of the surge of product going out, that this can be a real issue. And so we just say plan early on this one to give yourself the amount of time that you need to get it in and through. So coming to the end here, just some key considerations. The first one, as we mentioned, is that we do expect COVID to remain an issue going into 2022. And so on this one, having a group that's on the ground is important if you want to have these discussions. That said, we'd encourage you, just if you can't have a group on the ground, if you can't be there in person, go ahead and make sure that you're asking for it, though, even if it needs to be over video. The second one is just the relationship does remain an important constant. If you've been a customer over a long period of time, that's a feather in your cap. And so making sure that you spend enough face time with people is important. And so if you've been doing everything by email and it's been a while since you've talked even over video, we just say, make sure that happens. The third one is just that China does remain a very, very strong contender. If you're looking at motors or electronics or other pieces, we expect to see these products to continue to be manufactured in China for many, many years to come. So for some of you, I know you're kind of trying to decide, do we pivot inside or outside? But there's definitely areas where we see value add manufacturing that's going to continue to be quite strong in the country in the years to come. Final one, just getting very, very direct on this. One is that this is the right time to talk to your manufacturer. And if you're dealing with like a mid to lower level account rep, make sure you ask them, just say like, hey, I'd like to talk with leadership. It's something that's normal and common. And so especially if you're doing it once a year, you're not going to get that necessarily like on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but on a once a year standpoint, like that would be totally acceptable and understood within the context of the culture. The second one is just really, you'll want to assess where your manufacturer is at. The challenge is that when you can't walk through a facility, when you can't talk to people, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to assess where they're at. But with the right questions done delicately and the right attitude, we find that you can assess quite a bit. The final one is that I encourage you to really determine what your path forward is. Engagement or diversification or a hybrid between the two. First one is that if you're going after lower cost, if that's really what you're about, you're going to want to see them either moving towards automation or towards opportunities that are inland. The second one is that if you're looking for faster product development, it's likely that you're going to want to stay in country for a period of time. We're seeing slower development time periods in other countries, not in all product categories, but as a general one, we see China as one of the fastest development areas if you're not in a very local place. Obviously, if you're going to be staying like very domestic, like in the US, if you're out of the US or other countries, if you can do it here, all of your development here, it's very, very fast. It's just you're looking at cost considerations at that point. The final one is like when you're looking at domestic sales, either yours or theirs, and then whether you want to be diversifying your supply chain. I think we've all seen that having a diversified supply chain is a very, very important component towards future production. But from a subcomponent standpoint and from a where you're going to be shipping parts for some time, oftentimes we see China as a key consideration in this. And so just having those talks, having the discussions, and then setting your plan forward is really important as you start to move into 2022. But with that said, we wish you the best on your product development goals and aspirations, and good sales as you come into the end of the year and as you move into the next. So with that, I'll turn it over to Caroline for questions and answers.
All right, great. This is just a reminder for anyone that is still on the line. If you have a question that you'd like to answer by either Benjamin or Lewis, please put that in the Q&A section right now. And I'll go ahead and get started with the first question from Carmen. She said she's currently investigating the sourcing of a new automotive accessory device that contains a lot of injection molded parts, as well as electronics made by companies in China. The concern with sourcing final assembly in China is the high US tariff, 27.5%. What pros cons would I consider as I weigh final assembly in China versus another country such as Mexico? Are there any good strategies in dealing with these high tariffs?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and take this one. So when we talk about electronic assemblies, especially in the automotive side, we're talking about a lot of certifications that are necessary for this, and specifically, components that you're going to be finding specific to that particular assembly. That said, we've been seeing a lot of automotive organizations that have been transitioning. And so that's not just international groups, that's also China-based groups. So this might be where you'd be looking at either a China-only strategy if you want to stay with the China components, or you might look at a hybrid strategy where you end up engaging with the organization on the China side who may have some of the IP that's around that, and to find out, are they either moving inland or are they actually moving to other countries? Because we've been seeing a number of China groups start to diversify their manufacturing. So again, there's a number of different options there on the assembly side. That said, I would encourage you, when it comes to automotive types of components, both because of the testing as well as because of the components that are involved, it may not be the easiest switch. And so it's not, I would definitely say if you end up doing a strategy, more of a hybrid strategy on that one, you want to find out if the components are already being made in a different country in terms of assembly. Like just assuming that you can take the bill of material and kind of plop it down into another country can lead to some challenges later on and some delays. And so making sure that you have enough production there. But this is one where again, this will not be like super surprising to your Chinese manufacturer if you're already engaged with one in country, to have the discussion. And so I would say, you know, again, delicately, you want to make sure that there's the opportunity for them to see that there's continued opportunity there, especially if there's been any IP investment on their side in terms of with the product. But that said, is that you know, these types of discussions, as long as it's not kind of the cut and dry, like, you know, my way or the highway type of thing, there's a lot of opportunity for discussion around this in terms of opportunities and understanding where they're at as an organization, in terms of, because they're going to be seeing some of the same pressures you are as well.
All right, next question. What are the current lead times with shipping container shortages?
Actually, for the lead time, I know we get like container quotation about within 5 days, and get like the container bouquet for 15 days. But arriving to United States, Ben, can you help them on this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so with regards to booking, you know, you kind of have kind of expedited services, if you will, that are at higher costs. We've seen booking, you know, consistently in the 24-hour to 48-hour time period, and then you can be on the ship within about 5 to 7 days. As Lewis said, if you're looking for kind of more your mainline types of pricing, you're going to be looking at, say, 3 to 5 days in terms of with getting initial quotes back, and then it can take as long as 10 to 15 days to actually get it actually you know, moved and on the ship. So that's just kind of a rule of thumb as you look at this. I would say that the container shipping side of things, again, and this would just be from what I understand at this point, just talking to different groups that we're in relationship with, is that it's really a lot of the logjam is that if you were to go and take a boat tour, you know, in LA on the port side, you'd see a lot of the cranes are not operating right now. Many of them are, but some of them are not. And part of it is because there's too many containers that are waiting in the yard. And even once we solve that problem, many people have probably seen that recently, as an example, LA is now charging for groups that are over a certain period of time. That then goes to the next area. So if you're talking about rail or other areas, like once you end up getting to capacity, and this is an area that I think is difficult for all of us, is that there's only so much you can squeeze the stone on that one in terms of once you get to capacity, and that when we see capacities that are 20% over what we've done in the past, it's not that there was a lot of capacity before. And so because of that, that's where we're seeing a lot of our delays. We're seeing a lot of challenges on that side. We're not seeing as many challenges on the China side or even in other countries in terms of getting containers to ship in. Again, if you're wanting to get something for $4,000, you're going to be waiting for a while, but again, we've seen prices come down to about $8,000, you know, depending on where you're shipping. So still expensive, but certainly down from the summertime pricing, and we're seeing relatively fast turnover times.
All right, next question is a little bit broader, is how will China going green change things?
Sure, Louis, would you like to give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for a citizen that live in China, back to my father's generation, they always say like living in the small town, this kind of stuff always feels like they can play in the river. But really, as the biggest manufacturer country right now in the world, the river gets dark. Like we don't eat like any fish, like any food from the river. So for environment parts, I think that is really a big responsibility that China should take in over for, especially manufacturers also have so many pollution. And right now for government checking part, there is a very specific factory audits. When we do factory audits, the pollution is very specific, high demands when we're doing that, like to make sure not including our checking, but also the government checking to make sure this manufacturer is not making like a crazy pollution right now. But we can feel like for our daily life, we can feel the environmental getting better and better, considering especially but compared to my father's generation, they're still like worse, but it's getting better. We can see that.
I would also just say, I was in China in 2013 and 14, which I don't know if others would say it, but I would say it was kind of a peak in terms of it was pretty challenging around that time. We've seen significant inroads in terms of with getting very tough with manufacturers and other organizations that are considered high polluting groups. If you're looking at for instance, chrome plating, when I was first in China, back in the early 2000s, and for those that were in the late 90s, you could find all sorts of chrome plating, electrolysis, these types of factories. And so it's being done very, very cheaply, which indicates that it was not being processed correctly afterwards. That said, it's much, much more difficult to find these groups. And specifically around this and in other industries, there's been a lot of work that's been done in China towards that. I think, though, that you're still looking at a massive volume of production that's going on in China. And so switching that over, especially when we talk about power considerations. So for many of you, you'll probably be familiar with where the origin of the power is, affects a lot of how we look at how green something is. So these are areas that you can be looking at, power plant production and other things like you have to get those done over many, many years. And so this will be where we see longer term where the country will be going. But as Louis said, they're seeing a lot more blue skies over there, which is, I know, encouraging to them, and I think also to the rest of the world.
All right, next question is from Bo. He says he acts as an agent for brands looking for China domestic sales. The products being made are from imported raw materials. He's been told to do this. The invoices need to be paid to a Chinese account. Is this accurate?
So essentially, Caroline, that the question is about product that is using imported raw materials.
Correct.
That then is manufactured in China and then sold within the China domestic market. And that what he's being told is that they have to have China domestic receipts for the product.
Correct. I can also, I'll take him off mute if Bo, if you want to clarify that.
I think it's related to Fapiao or.
Hi, yeah. We produce the product in China.
Mm-hmm.
The customers normally pay me directly. And in order to ship within country, I've been told that the customers have to pay the manufacturer directly.
Is the customer in China or outside of China?
Outside of China.
Got it. And in the past, you ended up paying the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer ended up shipping to the client directly?
Yes, outside of China, we have no problems. The customer pays me, I pay the manufacturer, we ship. But when they want to start shipping within China, I've been told that the customer, let's say in the US, would have to pay the manufacturer directly. I think this has to do with VATs, but I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah. Louis, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, it's really depends related to the VAT. We call it 发票 here, like because it's also a raw material. So any factory manufacturer purchasing raw material, they got a 发票 from the supplier, and they can also use this 发票 to turn some money back from the government about the VAT. That's why he keep consistent, like you have to pay to the Chinese account.
Okay. So we need to set up a trading company or something of that nature in China.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to understand a little bit more deeply kind of what the relationship is like, and would be happy to take that offline with you, just because
Absolutely.
once you start to get into that, especially if you start talking about creating trading companies and other things, there's a lot of effort that's involved in that. And so understanding it more deeply, especially with like kind of who owns the raw material, who's paying for the raw material, how much value add is going into it. But I do think that you're probably on the right track in terms of with the VAT being a clear piece of this. There's also been a lot of strengthening of laws to make sure that the product that was supposed to be exported didn't fall off the back of the truck, so to speak. And
Right.
so if there's inland transportation that's going on that's not going directly to the port, sometimes that can cause certain issues for your manufacturer.
Okay, I'd love to hear or discuss this more, and yeah, we can take it offline.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll connect both of you after the session is over.
Thanks so much, guys.
Certainly.
All right. So the next question is, when we were looking at manufacturing in the US, the mold costs are incredibly high. Is that because US manufacturers are sourcing molds from China?
I wouldn't say, I don't know that I would make that particular logical jump in terms of like that the cost is high because it's coming from China. I do think that sometimes organizations that I've seen end up sourcing their molds from China in order to lower their overall cost on the mold side. Now, that's not the case across the board. There are some very, very good domestic US manufacturers that have very, very competitive mold costs on that side. However, that said, again, like it really depends on the manufacturer. It depends on what sort of orders that you're going to be providing to them, because like the percentage of the mold costs that they're going to pass on to you, if it's 100%, all of that is highly indicative of like pricing that you're going to see. However, what I will say, and again, this is one of those complex changing situations, which is that if you think about what's the inputs to those molds, part of that is engineering talent. Like that's not an insubstantial portion of it. But then you're also going to be having things like for instance, your raw materials that are going into it. And so having access to high quality steels and other products is important. A lot of times those steels then will go to what did it cost to make this steel, which then goes to energy inputs. And then the final one would just be on your, on your CNCing and then your hardening techniques and these things. There's a lot of energy input to this. One of the things that we're seeing in China right now is around pricing with power. That's starting to float a little bit more. So I would say this is one to kind of keep tabs on as we move into the future. But again, we do see quite a few companies, whether we're talking about Central and South America or otherwise, that are still actually doing a lot of the machining of molds out of China and then getting that out. But my sense is that primarily they're doing that because for price reasons. In other words, it's a cheaper one. If you want to get it done faster, then oftentimes getting it domestically can be a better option.
All right. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but a question around if shipping costs are going to improve in Q4 or after Chinese New Year.
Yeah, so at least at Gembah, we try and be as transparent as possible on this one. You'll see a lot of people, saying this is what's going to happen, and I realize that everybody wants the soundbite, everything else. I don't think that anyone fully knows where this is going to go. When we ended up doing our last logistics webinar, the power shortages that ended up affecting a lot of production in China had not hit yet. And so that had a cooling effect in terms of like the amount of production that's being done moving forward, but not in all industries. And so in some product categories, there's still a lot of production that's going on. And so in that, I think, as we look towards it, the indicator would be that things will begin clearing up. There's less pressure. We can see this in the pricing that's already stabilized, at roughly, the pricing came down about 30 to 40% on many containers that were being shipped once the surcharges came off of it. That said, I think that there's going to be continuing to be pushes into production through Chinese New Year. And so my sense would be that we're probably not going to see it come down additionally very much until significantly after Chinese New Year. So again, take that with a large grain of salt, which is that everyone's kind of looking at where in the supply chain the bottlenecks are. And right now we're seeing kind of, if you look at the python that ate the deer, we're seeing the deer kind of flow through the python in terms of with the surge of activity. And so that said, on pricing, we may start to see a stabilization in the summertime in terms of additional pricing coming down, but that essentially that still will take time to work its way through the entire system. Louis, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as well.
I think Zach probably can answer these questions.
Yeah, so in our organization, we have a group that's dedicated towards the logistics side of things to work through this. But again, it's a major question. Everybody wants to know kind of the answer to that because it affects so much kind of decisions moving forward.
All right, next question is about automation. Would that make production more expensive or cheaper?
Louis, can you speak maybe to loans and incentives that are available in terms of low cost loans for capital expenditure?
Yeah, so I think for the cost standpoint, it can get in cheaper. But for the business side, if really factory taking charge of your cheaper or expensive will be not. So for the cost standpoint, for example, what I see in the factory before they packaging the stuff, 10 people, as a group, and use the 2 groups together to packaging all the stuff. But they purchase a packaging machine. I also saw that actually in Vietnam, but that is the trend of more manufacturer accept using the packaging machine instead of hiring more people, labor to doing the packaging stuff. Just because they can save more money. So for the cost standpoint, I believe a factory can save more money, but for the business side, it really depends on how negotiable with the manufacturer and understanding the situation, really factory costs get lower or not.
Yeah, and this is where, I mean, again, on the input side of it, if you're thinking about how much it's going to cost the manufacturer to invest in those technologies and automation, this is where their access to loans becomes quite critical. But then also in terms of their overall desire to stay within the market, to actually make sure that this is manufacturing that stays in that location. That's a really, really important input in terms of understanding. And then on the output side of it is that for manufacturers that end up doing that investment, they're going to want to see some type of return for that investment. And so initially, you may not be told that hey, we ended up doing this because they're trying to improve their margins. this is where having eyes within the manufacturer is important, and just having the discussion, which is like, so before there used to be 10 people that are packaging now today, there's say 3 people packaging right now, and then going through and just doing a quick back of the envelope analysis of kind of what is the 10-year investment of that piece of equipment, and what should the actual cost be to you as an organization, which is to say, hey, that's great. We see that as value add. We want to continue working with you. And our sense is that you know, some of the price increases that maybe you were passed along, you know, over the past couple of years, maybe some of those could actually reverse. And so what would it actually look like to go into a reversal in terms of cost down? These are important conversations to have, not from a demanding standpoint, but certainly from a, you know, when you're there and you say like, hey, great, this is awesome. We're so glad that you've invested in this. So for us as an organization, for you as an organization, there's benefit. For us as an organization, what is the benefit from that? They may come back and they may say, well, it's going to be higher quality, but oftentimes there can be cost reductions as well in that.
All right, so it could be both. Next question from Monica. We have some vendors that are struggling with apparel manufacturing due to mills shutting down. Is it best to have a direct relationship with the fabric mill to offset this risk, as it has been a tough ask to contact mills and partners?
Yeah, so we have a number of different projects where we actually work directly with the mills. The thing about this is that when you're looking at your overall EAU that you need to be purchasing from the mill, that may be one of the primary reasons why it can be challenging. That said, I think you know, there's all sorts of reasons for like getting faster information, like getting it, you know, more transparency within your supply chain is really, really important. Because as an example, like understanding the same week that a mill starts to go into a power shutdown sort of situation, where if they're going to be down for 2 days or even 5 days, we have some mills who are relatively unaffected by what's going on, and then we have other ones that are shut down for 5 days. Louis could tell you, you know, a situation where suddenly our discussions, you know, suddenly it was like, and we're going to be going to trade shows or other things. Like this is the sort of thing that I think having the eyes and ears, you know, on the ground, if you can, is really beneficial for that. But ultimately, I think understanding, like, for the partners that you're working for right now, or working with right now, the cut and sews, I would say don't necessarily assume that that they're trying to like protect margins or other things. They may be doing that, but don't necessarily assume that. There may be, again, like I said, minimum order quantities, and then also just the fact that prioritization, you know, we talked about prioritization earlier today, is that may be based on relationship. They may go back, say, 20 years, and you may be getting the best situation you can. That said, kind of knocking on a few doors, understanding what's going on, is something we would always encourage people to be doing. Maybe starting outside of your supply chain, like outside of your current network, and then working your way in once you have more knowledge. Louis, other thoughts in terms of with mills?
My advice really is get more direct contacts with the mills, but at the same time, mills always like require very high quantity of orders. So and also mills and like cut and sew manufacturer usually have a very good relationship. So even though you contact to mills and they will go back to the cut and sew manufacturer, say, hey, that's the same clients, like they will probably like matching together for the information. So it's also some of the risk for you if you could directly contact to mills, also hurting the relationship that you build with the cut and sew manufacturer.
All right. Next question is, are there any thoughts on the power outages? How long will they keep going, and how much longer are production lead times going to take because of them?
Actually, we really focusing on this topic. It's also national topics. We worry about if they're going to influence our life. Like tomorrow, probably we have no electronic using, but we have no idea how long it will takes right now, and we didn't see like there is a different like words in the market saying like, well, until November, because November the north area of China will start using the hot
Heating.
heating, and so that's kind of like I believe something government stuff will announce pretty soon to make sure everything can goes well.
Yeah, so what Louis is talking about is that around the 15th of November, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the 15th? Yeah, the 15th.
15, yeah.
Around that time period, nationally, we end up seeing a switch over to steam power plants and a lot of other power plants. And so this will have a big impact on both coal usage as well as natural gas usage throughout the country. So again, like, I think that the challenge here is you'll see a lot of people who will kind of try and predict, and you got a 50-50 chance in terms of which way you say it. But like that would be a next milestone to really look towards, is that, as Louis said, there's going to be additional announcements at that time. We may see an extension of power rationing that's going on past that. Again, I think that the key thing is that this is a discussion to be had with the manufacturer and to be understanding, because even as Louis just mentioned here, they may not know. Like as much as we want to pin them down and really say like, you need to tell us like yes or no. If you pin them down really hard, they'll give you an answer, but they may not know. And I think that part of it would be, my sense would be that the worst of it is probably over. In other words, if your supply chain is not being affected by it, then it's likely not going to be affected moving forward. However, for those being affected today, there may not be a clear understanding as to how much. So if they have like 5 days of rationing going on, will that go to 3 or will it go to 0? Like that. That's kind of the question that people don't have a strong answer for at this point. But again, so understanding that will largely affect it. I would say if you don't hear something around the November 15th timeframe, that we may be seeing this all the way into the Chinese New Year timeframe. Again, it's a sense, and really it'll be up to other people to make those types of decisions going forward. But that your manufacturer may be at risk during that entire period. And so, hoping for the best after the 15th, like, I don't know of any major milestones before Chinese New Year that would like indicate that there would be a change in the interim process. So that's just kind of hopefully helpful for you to understand kind of the geography and the terrain as you move forward in terms of making the best decision you can as an organization.